Hi everyone, how are you today? Bess McCarty here, Victoria, Kansas with the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Today the topic is how to get others to see things your way quickly from this book by Giblin called How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People. You may have seen a blue cover of this book as well. So this is a very interesting chapter. You know, when we want to win arguments, what's the way that's always going to work against us, and what's the way that will work? So this is I'll just preface this a little bit. This is the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. It comes to you every Monday through Friday, every weekday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And usually it's sponsored by the MLM Millionaire Academy, our generic school for network marketers. It helps people to always get a yes and jump ranks and never get objections, and the best, easiest, fastest way I've ever seen to build a network marketing business in all my many years in network marketing, although I'm a dedicated generic coach for network marketers from this point on, even though I was full-time for years. Normally this show, what we do is we cover a personal growth book every month. Oftentimes it's John Maxwell. This time it's Giblin. So this always helps entrepreneurs. Our purpose of this show is to help people grow, to educate, equip, and empower entrepreneurs, and create independent servant leaders. You can find all the replays for this show, and they're always broadcast at the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show Facebook group, where you can scroll down and find all the replays and the notes for the books, and 600 MLM leaders in there. So we'd love to have you join us. You can get a free book. You can request a free book when you join, and you can also request text reminders for these shows. So normally this show is, welcome Jason, good to see ya. Welcome. And if you're watching the replay, please type in replay, because I'd like to thank you for watching. Normally this show usually it's presented Monday through Friday by Jeffrey David Gamble and Brandy Pember, but on Wednesdays I present. And so I'm happy to present the show today. And okay, so let's get to the topic, how to get others to see things your way quickly. And Giblin in this book, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People. I'm going to put a little bit of my spin and my opinion on this as well. But in this book, in this chapter, he points out that there are occasions when we really would like to get the other person to see our own viewpoint, and not necessarily are we always able to do that, but there can be diplomatic and good and kind ways to do that. There can be cases when a customer might be angry and they're just not seeing some things, or your boss comes up with an idea and there's some serious flaws in it that could really hurt the company, and you want to help, or you think that you deserve a raise, and you believe the company can afford it, but your boss said, well, we can't afford it. And what do you do in these situations? Or your wife wants to send your son to a private school, but you feel it might not be that it wouldn't be in his best interest. So what do you do here? And he says, well, the natural thing that we want to do is we want to fight, we want to force, we want to, sort of get the person to think our way and pressure our viewpoint, because we think that, get somebody to back down, and that's the way to win an argument. When actually that works totally against us. It never wins. It says nobody ever wins an argument that's done this way, with force and with pressure from the other person. And welcome Joe, glad to see you. I guess I should invite some people here while we're speaking, and I want to invite you to do that as well. If you know another network marketing group that could use to see this, or an entrepreneur, or just anybody in their life, because this applies to all life situations too, this particular book and this particular chapter. It can be applied to family members, it can be applied to business, church, community, friends, all situations. It's said that every problem is really a communication problem. So I love this art of communication, and I also see my human limitations and my past programming and society's habits and my dysfunctional role models. I see all that stuff, so I know this is going to be a lifetime art for me to master and have patience. It's when I speak with family members that I actually get triggered the most. And I find I want to give advice, being a counselor and a therapist and a coach and all that. But I need to, hold back until they ask, or I can ask permission. So I've got still a lot to refine in this art of communication, and appreciate this chapter. Hello, Mr. Roeder. Glad to see you. Yes, it's Wednesday. Every day I love helping people, so I forget that it's what day. I forget about being Wednesday being Hump Day. But thank you, David. A lot of people go to work and would like an alternative to that, and so they naturally think that way. So, science discovers a way to win arguments, he said. And they've actually done these studies where there was 3 Yale psychologists that noted, they did this 15-minute experiment on educating people about dental hygiene. And what they did was they had this first group, and they did very strong appeal to them, all the dangers of not doing your dental hygiene. The second group, they did more moderate warnings and facts, but some facts, but less moderate scare techniques. And the third group, all they did, he said, is they presented it factually, straightforward information that hardly touched on the dangers of neglect. And then they did follow-up on these 3 groups to see which students had the better dental hygiene after a certain period of time. And surprisingly, the students that were in that third group with the very soft appeal and just the information, mostly just the facts and hardly any of the dangers, they were the ones that did the best. And they were, the ones that, they were more closely to follow the practices outlined in the lectures than those who had the scare appeal. So I think the news thinks we need this, or advertisers or marketers think we need this, or we think we need this, right? If you tell your son, drive carefully, and then try to scare him with all this stuff, I guess that might not have as much effect as just presenting it neutrally, because I think people discount, this is my own opinion, I think people discount us when they see us being too emotional or dramatic or trying so hard to convince them, that we're desperate to convince them or something like that. They sense that and they just discount the whole thing. So I think, people like to make their own opinions, give them the facts and give them the respect. Let us give people the respect to make their own decisions and stuff. And so there was this, you're right, yeah. There was this other study, this most exhaustive research that anybody's probably ever done about arguments, was these 2 professors in the New York University speech department. What they did is they listened to 10,000 actual arguments over 7 years. To see, these were arguments between taxi drivers, between husbands and wives, between business people, debates in the UN, and they made notes of who won the arguments and why. And they found that these professional debaters, the politicians and the UN delegates and all that, were less successful in door-to-door salesmen in getting their ideas accepted, because they seemed to be intent on bearing down upon the opposition and attacking the ego of the other person. And so this study showed that that's the worst thing that we can do, is attack their ego, and make them look stupid or wrong or something like that. And we think, well, that will surely, I can see they're wrong or stupid. And so if I can get them to see that, surely they'll finally agree with me, and they'll see the wisdom of my ways and how bad theirs are. But they don't. When we attack people and their personality and everything, they seem to put on the brakes. It seems to elicit their defenses more than their open mind. Wouldn't it me? Wouldn't it you? If somebody's attacking me or my intelligence or something like that, then I'm busy feeling too busy feeling bad about it to be able to see their viewpoint. I can see their viewpoint when I feel accepted, heard, and all that stuff. So he does give suggestions on how to do that. And he says, even if you beat somebody and, make them agree with you. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So he said there's just one way to get an idea accepted, and that's by suggestion. Because when somebody says you can't do that, then you're going to want to do it, right? So he has a few ways to help let that suggestion sink in better. And I like these. Number one, he said 6 tested rules for winning an argument. Now, to me, winning an argument doesn't mean that I'm right or I get my way, but winning an argument means that we both consider the other's viewpoint. He talks in here about getting the other person to see your viewpoint, but I would like to add another part of that, and is that may I be so humble, open-minded, as to be able to see their viewpoint as well. So to me, winning an argument means, or successfully arguing or negotiating, to me that means that we both get to stand in each other's shoes and see each other's viewpoint in a way beyond what we have done before. Let me not be the focus. Let my focus not be just to get the other person to see my view, but for me to stand in their shoes, because humbly, I may be wrong myself. I may be missing a few pieces of the facts myself. I may see something that I hadn't before. Why not? I'm human. So let us both be able to enlighten each other. That's what I consider a successful outcome of an argument. He only speaks about one side in here, but I'm proposing 2. And welcome, Mary. Glad to see you. Welcome, Lawrence. Hey, if anybody here has ever seen that they could do better in an argument than they did, please type in yes. Because I've been in 2 of those the last excuse me. I've been in 2 of those situations the last 2 days. And afterwards I say, okay, what went well and what could I have done better? I could have listened more. I could have made more room for the other person with, close people that trigger me. Okay, so here's Les Giblin's 6 tested rules for winning arguments. Number 1, he says, don't interrupt. Let him state his case. Remember the magic of listening, him or her. So it's rare that someone can do this. As soon as we hear something we disagree with, we quickly want to, help the person see the truth as quickly as possible. Let me save you just, going down that road. Let me save you. This is what goes on in me. Let me save you saying the whole thing. Let me save you from wasting all that energy, and let me just shortcut it for you and tell you what I see and tell you why I'm right. Tell you what you should be thinking instead, right? The ultimate insult. But that's what we're tempted to do. As soon as we hear it, we want to fix it as soon as we can, right? We don't want them to keep going down the wrong road. Of course not. So we interrupt them. But that's not going to that's not going to be successful for you. It's not going to get you heard. So first, hear them. If you want to be heard, first hear them completely, he says. And not just a little bit, not just partially. But he said listening. Remember the magic of listening. And then ask if there's anything else he'd like to say, he or she. And then a step further, first of all, a step further is to repeat back what you heard them say. That would be active listening, where you say, did I hear you correctly? You want you feel da 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 da, and you want da 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 da. Then they relax. They know that they were heard and understood. Or they can say, almost, but it's really more like this, so they can correct what you said. So what you're doing is you're checking, did you hear correctly? And secondly, it also gives that person the comfort and relaxation and validation that they were heard and that you heard them and that they were understood. Now they can sit back and relax, because now they've discharged that charge of that anger or that urgency that they had, or that emotion, especially if someone's hot under the collar. He said it's so important to listen first if someone's hot, because guess what? They can't hear you in a state of emotion. Their logical self, their right brain, their left brain is the logical self. That is not active right then. If somebody's emotional, it's all right brain. Can't hear another person when we're being emotional. We cannot be logical when we're being emotional. So you got to let them discharge that first. Or even, you're angry because, you're really angry because of this or that. And, this is what you'd like instead. Yeah, darn right, But now they've settled down a notch. And is there anything else you'd like to say? So you discharge that. Now they're calm and relaxed and more receptive to what you might have to say. Hey, Janice, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I like when you comment because then I know you're there and I get to welcome you. And we're talking about how to win arguments, with love and consideration and respect by Les Giblin, how to have confidence and power in dealing with people. So I know a lot of you know all this, but I'll tell you, for me, I always find tips I can get better every day. So the first thing he says is to listen, like we said, and even reflect back the act of listening. You say, is there any more you'd like to say? Number 2, he says, pause before you answer. I like to add in there, take a breath, because that sort of resets my brain, rather than my reactionary self wants to speak right away. But if I can pause, take a breath, then I think what's going to come out is going to be better than if I just immediately respond, knee-jerk reaction, respond back. Let me take a breath. Let me pause. Let me check in with myself and maybe the kind ways to say something. Also, when you pause, it lets the person know that you're considering, that you're being thoughtful, that that you're not just reacting to them or not just throwing away what they just said, that you're pausing, you're considering. So it's very effective, a short pause. Number 3, don't insist on winning 100%. If the person has a point in his favor, acknowledge it. If you need to, and you can validate somebody, you can say, yes, I see you have a good point here. I can understand why it might appear that way. You are certainly right about all that. And he adds but after that. I like to add and. In other words, he says, I can see you have a good point here, but have you considered this? I can understand why it might appear that way, but on the other hand, I like to say and because I've heard that the word but disqualifies everything that went before it. It disqualifies what they said. So I like to use the word and. You have a good point there, and have you thought of this or that? So I'm putting my own little, suggestions in here. And he said, if you cannot grant the request of an employee or your son or somebody like that, a family member, explain why. Because that helps them a lot. Okay, number 4, state. Oh, and let's see, David Roeder. When both parties are listening, that's called a discussion, not an argument. Good job. Yes, okay. When there's listening involved, it's no longer arguing. And I don't like the word argue either because it implies force and trying to, win and coerce, control the other person. So I do like a discussion, negotiation. And to me that implies that I hear the other, I consider the other's viewpoint. I learned something as well as I hope to impart something. So thanks, David. Yeah, I don't like the word argument. How to win an argument, I don't like that, but that's the goal that a lot of people have. So probably that's why, that title might attract the attention, because that's where people's starting point in their mind is. So number 4, he says, state your case moderately and accurately. We talked about that a minute ago, because to exaggerate is too forceful and people will just, discount the whole thing. So, not exaggerate, be moderate. And it was Benjamin Franklin who had so much success. He was credited with having put across, with much opposition, the Constitution of the United States. And he says, state your case moderately and accurately. So there's an experienced, successful person giving us advice. Whether it's the Constitution of the United States or our mate. And 5, he says, speak through third persons. Like if you think that you deserve a raise, rather than go in and say, well, I think I should have a raise, You could go in and say, my track record shows that I should be considered for a raise. Or, you know, if your wife wants new drapes all the same color, instead of saying, well, that would be boring, you could quote, yeah, Peter Hayes on the radio was telling about how he and his wife furnished their place with different colored drapes. So you can quote somebody else is more effective than giving your own opinion. This is called third-party validation. We know that in network marketing, don't we? We know that people may be too close to us to consider our opinion worth much or being an authority. They may know us since we were little and all that. So bringing in a third-party validation, another speaker, another book, to help the person know that it's not just me, and you know, then they have, you know, it seems to be more effective. So you can do that with this. And welcome, Paul. Glad to see you. Welcome, everybody. Hey, if you would like to get better at communicating with people, please type yes, because I have another book to suggest in just a minute. I'm finished what Les Giblin is saying in here, and how to have confidence and power in dealing with people. And this is chapter 10, how to win arguments. So number 6 tip that he has is let the other person save face. Leave the door open, because that person may be ready to agree with you or to give you what you want, but they might feel bad because they took such a strong stance. Now they feel kind of ashamed to go back on it, you know, like it invalidates themselves. So he says leave them a way out. Like one method, he says, assume the other person did not have all the facts to begin with. Like, of course I can understand how you might have thought so-and-so since you didn't know such and such at a time. They go, oh yeah, yeah. Or you can say anybody would have thought the same thing under the circumstances. Or I felt that way at first, but when I ran across this information, then I ran across this information which changes the whole picture. So you kind of give them an out, you know, like you're there to help or support. And number 2 suggests that they can, it's kind of a tricky way to let the person not take responsibility for something, but he says, suggest they can pass the buck. Like there's this lady who took something back to the store, and they weren't, you know, had to be not warned, but they could tell clearly this item had been dry cleaned. And the lady goes, oh no, it's never been worn, you know. And they, instead of saying, hey, we can tell it's been dry cleaned, what they said was, Mrs. Customer, I wonder if some member of your family could have sent this dress to the cleaners by mistake. I know the same thing happened to me not long ago, when my husband sent a brand new dress to be cleaned and other things. I wonder if this could happen to you, because this dress definitely shows signs of being clean. So then the customer knows she's wrong. She has an excuse for getting out, you know, admitting that yes, it was cleaned. So these are his tips. He says, let them state his, you know, listen, pause, acknowledge their right points, you know, validate them, state your case moderately, speak through third person, and let the other fellow save face. I'm going to add a few more tips that I have learned 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago, that I have been practicing and teaching, called Compassionate Communication or Nonviolent Communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. This has been time-tested and true in my life for almost 40 years now, and in my practice, in my body-mind therapist, holistic health practitioner, counselor practice with people, and in my students. I've used this as a model. Just used it yesterday in coaching a lady and was teaching her this method. So, yeah, I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for your likes and loves. I'd love to hear your comments before I share this method. Do you have a question? Do you have a tip? Do you have a comment? Because I'd like to hear that. I'd like to hear that below. Let's keep the discussion going below, even after it ends. Okay, so Compassionate Communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg has been the chapter we just discovered. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you tomorrow for the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show, and we're going to cover, Jeff and Brandy will cover chapter 11 in here, which is how to get 100% cooperation and increase your brain power. Remember that you can watch all these shows on the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show Facebook group and the replays and get the notes there. And you can see this also on Jeffrey David Gamble's Facebook page, and thank you, Jeff, for the notes you put in there. This show, again, is sponsored by the MLM Millionaire Academy, our generic school for network marketers that Jeff and I teach in. The best, quickest, simplest ways we've ever seen in network marketing to build your business fast. And we've got the track records to prove it. Hope you join us. You can check out the school, by the way, at mlmmillionaireclub.com/basics. mlmmillionaireclub.com/basics. New site coming up. It's really now called the MLM Millionaire Academy, but glad to see you. I'll post the link. Everybody take care. Bye-bye.